Warriors, and welcome to this episode of the Love Your Life Show. I am so glad you're here. I had a wonderful conversation with our guest, and I cannot wait for you to listen in. Who is today's guest? What was this conversation about? All the things you want to hear about. Today's guest, her name is Amanda Curry. She's a trauma-informed doctor of physical let me my words wanted me to accent that. She's a doctor of physical therapy, certified oncology specialist, training camp for the soul master facilitator, breathwork facilitator, inner child, and reprogramming coach. Wide breath, we talk about it. She has a passion for helping parents, especially moms, learn how to be with their own emotions so they can be present for their kids, for their spouses, for the people in their lives, and be less reactive. That's why I wanted her on the show to help us all with these things when we're feeling that really big push of emotions. And what can we do about it? Well, Amanda has some things that she shares with us that will help you feel better. So she uses somatic tools like breath work, the use of felt sense, and inner child reparenting techniques. She guides others in uncovering the root beliefs that are keeping people stuck in overwhelm and frustration with who they are and how they're showing up in the world. So our tender little self, she's not afraid of big emotions and deep work. She's a solid space holder for the most tender parts of us. And she just values the need to honor where people are. And you get that sense in this conversation. I'm so excited for you to listen in. I haven't had someone speak directly to this topic before, and having someone that is so, is such an expert in this area was a pure treat for me, and I know you're going to get some great takeaways from this episode. So join in the listening and enjoying. All right, welcome to the Love Your Life Show, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so excited. I really wanted to have someone come on to talk about some of the things that we're talking about, and then when I saw your background and how you have a doctorate, I think from the university, the Tennessee Health Center, that you've been in oncology wards, that and then add to that, your Instagram is so wonderful. It really comes out your passion for helping moms with overwhelm, shame, and feelings of too much, which I know so many of us listeners struggle with. I knew you were the one I wanted to have come on. So can you explain a little about how you changed gears to dive into this world of inner child healing from your doctorate at Tennessee Health Center? I'd love to.
Yeah.
The fun
Yeah,
stuff.
it's been a ride for sure.
Mhm.
I like to say that I feel like I didn't miss the mark entirely because I'm still in a service-based industry and it's still body-based. So, and again, I'm still I'm a doctor. I have my doctorate in physical therapy from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. And yeah, it's one of those things where I almost feel like the gifts that I have and my calling, it just deepened. I only had capacity for the first, 30 years of my life to do more of the superficial physical, even though there's a lot of impact that can come from that. Working in the hospital setting, working in oncology spaces, that's not to like turn your nose up at. And it really the gift of COVID is that it allowed me to slow down enough to peek underneath of what I was really missing. And I was able to bring that somewhat to the patients that I currently still serve, but also to clients that really have walked the path or are walking the path that I did, that feel very lost in their body, that feel very disconnected from themselves. And the only thing that they really feel connected to is, again, what you shared earlier is shame, guilt, reactivity, overwhelm. And so yeah, it was through my own personal journey, but it's been really beautiful to watch, especially as breathwork being a little bit of a, the needlework in between, being able to put together things that I had been a part of for so much of my life, but now also these new parts that have emerged as well. And so, I often say this is the first thing that I've never pushed in my life on. I've just started to walk and take steps and not have necessarily an agenda. And it's worked out so far. Wish I would have known that. But it also served me. The way in which I was prior to my healing, deeper healing, it did serve me in a lot of ways,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
a
that's
lot of
what we
ways
find out, right?
yes,
Like
exactly.
I think I'm a decade or so above you, but it's like when I look back, I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. Like I was a high
Oh,
school French teacher.
always.
I'm
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, I see how that links to this, links to that.
Absolutely.
I was just
Absolutely.
looking for my phone because I had taken a screenshot of how you help, you were just speaking to some of it, help people so they don't feel as disconnected from themselves. Um, People who are snapping or being reactive with their kids or partners, lacking
Hmm.
connection with your partner, always putting others before yourself, paralyzed with confusion on what we even really need. And I'm like, yes, yes. So, how do you help with those things? Because I know the
Yeah.
listener, at least with at least one of those, if not all of those things I just read up, they're like, oh, yeah, that's me. I'm reactive. I don't know what I want. I'm pissed at everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Help.
And a lot of us, I would say the majority of people, if they're listening to the show, they've probably taken some sort of action, whether small or large, in the realm of trying to support themselves in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was for, 10, 15 or more plus years. It was reading all the books and being around positive people and
Mm.
going to traditional therapy and I mean, hell, being on medication. Like
Yeah.
you done all of these things and then there was still this part of me that was like, I'm coming back to square one over and over and over
Mm.
again. And one of the ways that I support my clients is through whatever their personality pattern is based on
Mm.
Stephen Kessler's book, The Five Personality Patterns. And so, being a primary rigid pattern, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that everything that I had been given prior, I'd done it all the way that it was
Mm.
supposed to be done. So then I was like, there has to be something else. And that was when, again, I was introduced to somatic inner child work from my now mentor, Anat Perry, and the work that she does with training camp for the soul. And so that really catapulted, I mean, not even catapulted. I always say that it melted my face off first because in all of the punch card time in the healing like chair of the therapist office, we had processed stuff that had happened with mom
Mhm.
and dad, but no one had framed it of mother and father learning. No one had
Mm.
ever um, taken me back to what's coming up in your body. It was always, what are you thinking and what's in your mind? And I grew very tired, as most people do, of the grinding, the mindset of like just I need to think better, and it's
Mm.
more than that. And so now, through again the certification program that Anat has, and that I now help to facilitate with, I get to bring this deeper healing out to moms. And I say
Mm.
that what's beautiful about this is that it's not throwing shade on traditional therapy.
Mhm.
Most people need things to build them up to get them to this deeper
Mhm.
healing. And
Yeah.
so I really love that, like, there's no, oh my God, I should be here, or, why haven't I tried this yet? You just don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
you've just used the tools that you currently have. And that's okay.
Well, and that's part of the whole shame spiral that we're trying to get out of. Is it's like, why haven't I done, or why did I do this first, or
Yeah.
why did I,
Yeah. Yeah.
and really speaking to, you know, the point that like all this stuff comes together to help. And it gets me at many different points for us as women and moms in this society, in that we are so often taught to look externally to see if we're doing the right thing, to see if we're good
The
enough, to see if we're,
patriarchy.
yes, that patriarchy, how
Yes.
literally our role is to serve other people. So we're always looking at that. And how we just sort of do the next right thing because, oh, everyone
Mhm.
else is doing this, or and so much of that healing is to just be like, okay, I am where I am right now, whether I spent 10 years in therapy or whether I did this, and bringing it all together for what works for us, which
Yes.
is why I
Yes.
love, another reason why I wanted you on, because you weren't just like, I do this and only this and I will only talk about this,
Yeah.
versus what I feel like is like, I'm like, people will ask me sometimes like, what kind of coach are you? I'm like, I am a coach that will help you, and I use CBT and DVD and blah, blah, blah. It's like
Yeah.
I will throw whatever at you that we think is going to be a good tool for that toolbox, based
For
on the
sure.
individual. And I think we get out of that mindset as women when we're thinking something's wrong with us, like there's something uniquely broken in us and we need that fix, whereas like there are plenty of things we can do to support ourselves. And I'm
And
almost, yeah, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say is even that is the starting point of the work that I do is that's a limiting belief is that I'm broken, that I need to be
Yes.
fixed, that I don't know the right answer, that I have to resource my power. And so again, a lot of people like to blame society or blame their husband or blame the patriarchy, but
Yeah.
it's all stemmed from what we learned from mom and dad. And of course, they are a byproduct of their parents to their parents to
Hmm.
their parents. And most of us have grown up in a society that is not based around the matriarchy. It's
Hmm.
mostly just indigenous cultures that do that now, or
Hmm.
that you will find that in. And so it's not a we are all man haters. It's that
Mm.
the and again, like I said before, the version of me prior did a lot of good. And part of the focus of patriarchy is the doing and the creation and the go, 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 go. And
Hustling for
there's a
our
time and a
worth.
place for
Yeah.
that. Yeah, there's a time and a place for that. And a lot of that is not sustainable. So that's the
Mm.
other component too, is that as women, we are being asked and we are being called to and wanting to do so much more. And so there's this no one has modeled or been able to construct what it is that we get to be in acceptance of in this new state of the world as we are as women, because
Mm.
we will always carry, and I'm going off on a little tangent here, but we will always carry the mental load because that is our gift. But
Mm.
it's how do we now as a society that is lit up by starting our own businesses and working outside the home or being in the home, but
Mhm.
having other priorities and hobbies too, like how do we create more capacity in our system to be with all of it or to be able to
Mhm.
like intermingle in between I need to rest and I can go.
Mm.
And so there's so much to unpack there. We could probably do a whole other podcast on it. But really, everything that we've already stated, there's likely a limiting belief that comes from it. And
Mhm.
that's where we really get to start to make shifts and changes to notice that the energy that I'm living through is not mine. It was
Mm.
given to me, programmed to me by mom and dad and past lineage.
Mhm.
But we get to let go of that and reprogram whenever we want.
Mm. I love that. I often think of when I'm feeling guilt. Like I used to think my younger self when I felt guilt that it meant that I was doing something wrong. But
Mhm.
now when I feel guilt, I now choose the thought that like, no, this is I'm coming up against conditioning. Like I'm coming up against some of those learnings from my mom or my dad or society or past generations and just it neutralizes it for me and allows me to see more clearly like what I'm moving
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. It
So I
creates
like
it as a part of you
yes,
and not
yes,
all of
it's a
you.
part, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it makes sense that I am feeling this because I'm, this is what was taught to me.
Yeah.
I really like what you say is that we do what we do until we get to a point and it's not sustainable anymore. And I think that's where a lot of people find themselves, 35 plus, that we're like in this, treadmill of life and we're trying to, the generations before us wonderful. They did change external, structures so that we could do more. Like I can have a job from my house with my husband who, does the shopping and the laundry and stuff because of my grandmother and because of,
Yes.
so those past generations, like, thank you very much. And yet I find that it's our generation's job to change the internal programming in our head because what we're seeing is a whole bunch of us just feeling as the things that you've talked about, the guilt and the resentment and the overwhelm, and we just
Yeah.
do it until we can't anymore. So, in terms of somatic and inner child, which how does that come in? Or even could we start with like someone because somatic is a word that you and I are obviously familiar with, but someone who's not, like, what does that even mean? Like somatic inner
Yeah.
child
Perfect.
coach,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. Yeah.
like blah
It's like
blah. Right.
yeah,
What are you
what
guys talking
language?
about?
Yeah. What language did you just start to? So Soma is in the way that I understand it and the way that I describe it, Soma is almost if you have anybody that's into religion on here,
Mhm.
it's almost like a triune. So it to
Mhm.
me is your mind, your body, and your spirit. And
Mhm.
so all of that together is when you are experiencing something, unlearning, processing, being present with all parts of yourself.
Mhm.
That is anything that is somatic. So, and again, it's not somatic, it's not just somatic inner child work and be somatic breath work. It can be somatic yoga,
Mhm.
somatic dance. It's when you are allowing space for all parts of yourself, your mind, your body, and your spirit
Mhm.
um, to come online and be a part of that experience, that to me is what somatic work is. And so this is not just inner child work where I'm going to write a letter to my inner child or take up my favorite hobby from 25 years ago. That's not what it is. It's about one, reestablishing the relationship and the connection to your inner child because it is still within you. There's an inner child within you, Susie, and within me,
Mhm.
Amanda, that is like lit up and having fun.
Mhm.
And the same one is little Susie that feels that guilt of like, oh my God, what
Mhm.
did I do wrong? Or I'm really afraid that like I messed up, or I chose myself and I'm not. Am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Your inner child is the programmer. That is the conditioning
Mhm.
that is operating. And so really to talk and then to bridge into somatic inner child work, again, it's based on my mentor's 5 stages of healing. So awareness, acceptance, getting to the root, reparenting and rewiring, and then integration. And so a lot of what we've already talked about is the awareness that we have, whether
Mhm.
it's that's the way that I've always been, or I'm a people pleaser, or I'm an Enneagram, whatever. It's an
Mhm.
awareness, but it only takes you so far.
Mhm.
And the problem is that our culture is obsessed with knowledge and data and awareness, but not in the application of such,
Mhm.
or it is less than. And so we get into the somatics more in the acceptance phase because it's not just, oh, this is the way that I am. It's all of the sensations that come up around guilt. Can
Mm.
you hold those in your body and not use protectors, not dissociate, not stuff, not
Mhm.
intellectualize? Can you just be with that? And that is then the conduit to the somatic connection to your inner child, going to
Mhm.
those root experiences where little Susie learned that she should feel guilty when she chooses
Mhm.
herself, or she should feel guilty when she says no to something that doesn't feel in alignment with her.
Mhm.
And you get to open that back up and
Mhm.
plant something in new and reparent yourself to teach yourself somatically. This is where the mind body comes together.
Mhm.
Um, in reparenting your inner child for a new possibility to happen that
Mhm.
actually serves the inner child instead of the society, community,
Mhm.
people around the inner child. And then it's, integrating that into your life, not just keeping
Mhm.
it in this session that you have with a coach or a facilitator, but like actually applying, oh, wow, like I can set a boundary with this person and say, like, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm going to have to stop doing our weekly coffee dates because blah, 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 or whatever
Mhm.
it is. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little preview of what somatic inner child work is based out of and through
Mhm.
in the way that I facilitate it.
I guess where I wanted to jump in is this to me, I want listeners to hear that this to me is the missing piece, that we can read the books, we can do
Thank
the
you.
classes, we can, I mean, for real, it's like that we can read about like how we need to set this boundary and say something at the coffee date, using your example, and we can be all excited to do it and all ready to do it. But if we are not addressing what it feels like as a human being to do that and supporting ourselves and our inner child in that, maybe we can do it once, but we're going to go right back like a rubber band, like right back
Yeah.
to the old way. That's like when I'm working with codependency, this is like the middle piece of my helping people
Hmm.
out of their patterns is that we have to I talk about like signaling safety to our body and sort of bringing ourselves back. And that otherwise we're this like white knuckling and like, well, Amanda and Susie said to just say no, but it feels
Yeah.
so awful to our system that that's going to show up
Yeah.
elsewhere. Um,
And the belief too is that because for a long time I was very good at white knuckling it and getting what I needed to get done.
mm,
But I finally wanted my internal state and my external state to match. And I think a lot of people, because they haven't experienced it, they don't know what it's like to actually feel in alignment. They just feel like that they have to grin and bear it. And I hope that they just don't completely burn my life down because I'm setting a boundary right now, and it doesn't have to be that way. It,
mm-mm.
it, it actually, when you do the deeper work, your alignment of both your inner and outer exterior start to match up. And it's really a beautiful thing
So
to
for
live
the
out.
listener who's like, well, maybe I am just grinning and bearing, what are some signs that they're grinning and bearing it?
Oh, I can 1,000% tell you that 98% of people are grinning and bearing it.
Yeah.
Um, if you are, I mean, just from a mindset, let's start from the top and then go down. Just from a mindset, oh, but I'm going to do this, but what if? But like playing the worst case scenario, the
Mm,
story that's coming up in my mind is that game. Um, any sort of visceral response in your body, any sort of headache that comes on, jaw pain, stomach pain, even
IBS.
avoiding, yeah,
Yeah, it's like
right,
that
any of it,
tensing.
yeah,
It's like the tensing in
yes,
your body, not just your
yep,
white knuckling.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think part of this too is, and you touched on it a little bit about like resourcing our power outside of ourselves and always, enlisting the thoughts and opinions of others is I think that the more online that women are able to tap into their intuition, their intuition is able to come back online and that feels safe for them. I think that a lot of these quote unquote signals, both mind signals and body signals, you start to notice them more because you don't explain them away or intellectualize them. And so a lot of people, I could give those examples and they're not necessarily present to them
Mhm.
because they've decided that, oh, it's because I'm eating gluten or, oh, it's
Mm,
because of this or that, and not that there's not a real
right. Hmm.
problem with gluten, but like we have just disconnected from ourselves on such a foundational plane that we don't really even know what misalignment and dysregulation looks like in our body. The only basis that we have is the reactivity, is the
Yes.
overwhelm, is the way
Yeah.
in which we're showing up in the world, which is like the last stages that we want to be
Right.
like operating in.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good point for listeners to just question because to me it's that like when we're putting something outside of ourselves as the reason for why we're feeling what we're feeling internally, like it showed up for me a lot as like the resentment or the irritation or the like
Hmm.
I'm fine and then I'm slamming the kitchen cabinet, or like yes I'll go to that thing but then I'm pissy the whole time I'm there, or but
Yeah.
the whole time I'm sort of blaming something externally for like I'm upset because my husband didn't fill in the blank, or I'm not, my gut is feeling this way because of the gluten, not because I've been walking around clenching my gut for, 4 days
Yeah.
or 40 days.
Yeah.
Um, so how could a listener, so they're like, okay, yes, like I am part of that percentage. I am definitely, in that area. How can they start to build some of the, you said create more capacity for feeling our emotions, or feeling more safe in our bodies? What are some of the first steps you would?
Yeah. Well, before I even answer that, what I would say, because I thought you were about to ask, like, what could they do in the interim?
Yes, do that.
Even if you never share this piece of paper or this journal entry with anyone, I challenge women that any sort of intuitive nudge, however crazy, however weird that it is, start writing them down.
Mm,
Maybe it is as simple as like, this girl just doesn't feel safe to me. You have no basis for it, but like this person does not feel safe to you. Write it down.
mm, mm,
Um, you have like some sort of random thought about going on a vacation on a place that you've never been and it doesn't make any sense at all that you would even go there. Write it down.
mm,
You being able again to connect with your intuition and signals that your mind, your body, and spirit are trying to guide you in is going to be your first and foremost like North Star point towards
mm,
any sort of change or inquiry about
mm,
what's coming up for you. There are a lot of different ways to increase your capacity. One is just like exposure, like just
mhm,
being in the discomfort and noticing and tracking sensations. For a lot of new clients, that's all we do. What do
mhm,
you feel in your body? Can you name it? Is it emotion? Is there more of just like a texture, a shape, a color, a
mhm,
temperature, and introducing people to parts of them that they have labeled as all of them.
mm,
Um, and again, like this is something that some people are really good at it, and some people they cannot even inherently identify pieces in their system that are lighting up because based on their personality pattern, they've learned to hold everybody else's, so they don't know what's theirs, or
mm,
they dissociate all the time, and so they've never been in their body. So again, everybody is so different,
mhm,
and I think that a lot of the reason why the five personality patterns is so impactful for clients, whether you choose to do work with me or any sort of somatic inner child work, is that these birth personality patterns are based on um, particular wounding that happened to
mm,
you or to your parents, and it gives these basis of safety strategies of what you need to feel safe and what the fears are. And so a lot of people they can't consciously say this is what I'm afraid of or this is what my body's really saying, but the book so beautifully lays out like where, for instance, codependent,
mhm,
those people are typically they merge and so they need to be filled up,
mhm,
there's never enough. I need to feel connected to somebody to feel love from them or to
Mhm.
feel worthiness. And so it's really beautiful that I'm not saying that you can't take this initially from a mindset perspective for some new, deeper awarenesses,
Mhm.
but the somatic practices of, felt sense of interoception, and then going into things like breath work is really, really powerful in you being able to hold space for yourself
Mm.
before you even get to these like really root experiences and being able to reparent yourself.
Well, and that's like the holding space is something that from my own experience and then from working with, so many women is what we're really not doing. That we're just going, going, going and doing, doing, doing and being, 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 for everyone else and having that experience of like, what am I actually feeling? Because that's one of my homework assignments too with clients. It's like, let's set a timer and check in with what it actually feels like to be you in your body in your day. Um,
Yeah.
and that's one of my challenges with intuition is that I had some deep wounds from parenting and then a first, marriage that listeners would be well aware of. But my intuition, what I thought was my intuition, was more a fear response to be safe in those relationships. And so, like, it took me a good bit of time to figure out, like, what was the fear response and what was my intuition. And a better way around that for me, instead of listening to like the nice voice that's like, why don't you just take a trip here? It was it was to do what you're saying and tapping into my emotions and just noticing. And again, listeners could use a journal for this, noticing like, I felt resentful today. I felt, what does that feel like in my body? Or I felt irritated today, or I felt like sometimes we can get to that negative feeling state
Yeah.
better to do some of this stuff. But what I'm really hearing from you is like, I love this. It's like bringing it all together, the
Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
mind, and spirit. Um, and
And
what?
the felt
Yeah.
sense too, to go to your point of like, is this
Mhm.
fear based or my intuition? They feel completely different in the body. So the
Yes,
more that you are able to hold or even just get curious, even if it's for a couple seconds, your fear-based response is going to feel something like heaviness, tightness, constriction, burning, any of that.
feels awful. Yeah,
Intuition does not feel that way. It feels
yeah.
expansive, it feels
Mhm.
flowy. And so that's another thing for people to notice is like, just get curious about what that sensation is like. It's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong. It's just noticing the descriptors of those sensations. And so, yeah, I love that you encourage people to do those exercises.
Mhm.
And what a lot of people that I find, especially moms and women, they don't want to touch these parts because they feel like it will become all of them. And then they will be this puddly mush on the floor and
Mhm.
can't get up to go to work, can't do their mom job, can't do anything. And fact is that a Harvard researcher has done extensive studies on the fact that your chemical response of your body on any emotion runs out in 90 seconds. So
Yeah.
if you were to actually feel that emotion fully through,
Mhm.
it's likely that will only last 90 seconds and then you come out on the other side. But
Yeah.
very few people have let themselves ride that 90-second wave.
Right. Well, because it feels uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable like stubbing your toe is
Yeah.
versus us not feeling it, resisting the feeling it, and then we might go through weeks feeling
Yes.
that,
Yes.
it's more like a
Yeah.
low level hump.
Yeah.
Um, and I really appreciate that reminder that it's like to actually feel a feeling, which is being in your body, not in your head, runs
Hmm.
out after 90 seconds. I
Yeah.
also uh, appreciate just recognizing that, these parts of us and how they influence us, because I think there was a very real part of me that wouldn't even let me feel intuition. Like I'm not quite sure what that felt like until I started like letting this other part like step down and like, you are safe here and
Hmm.
it's okay here. Um,
Yeah.
so we're sort of talking around the parts issue, and could you speak a little about, I don't know where you want to take this. You said something about how, sometimes we think one part of us is our whole self, or if you want to talk about how our parts are influenced by our mom and dad. What do
Yeah.
you see as sort of most helpful for people?
So I think that the way that this work is related to parts is that there are parts of us, the people pleaser, the avoider, the stuffer, the overdoer, the procrastinator, those parts are linked to a limiting belief from either mom or dad. Mom is a connection to self. That is a representation of self. You were within her for 9 months.
Mhm.
And so everything that she believed, said to you, thought about herself, but never maybe even said it to you or acted out, you took on as your own. And
Mhm.
for dad, he represents the world, or whoever that held you first. And that energy is what you took on as the world being safe and how others treat you and how others support you and basically how the external shows up for you. And so that would be all I would say around the parts piece to mom and dad is that those limiting beliefs that are part of you are from mom and dad.
Mm.
Now, the felt sense and the interoception is really more using not parts work in the traditional IFC or
Mhm.
IFS model, but it's showing that, like, oh, that heaviness that I feel is just in my chest. It gives
Mhm.
you a little bit of like an ability to take 2 or 3 steps backwards to where your nose is not up against the wall and it's a whole
Yeah.
black circle. It's you take 2 steps away and you're like, oh, that's only 2 inches wide. And it
Right.
gives you that clarity and that safety, that again,
Mm.
mind understanding of like, oh, wait, this isn't all of me. I can
Mm.
actually hold this part of me. And that gives you some, I think that the mind a little bit of ease of like, oh, wait, like we can ride this wave and then
Mhm.
get even deeper.
Mhm.
And so that's the way that we speak about parts in as it relates to somatic inner child work, which is a little bit different than your typical parts work that you would do with an actual IFS counselor.
But I really appreciate that. And I love like when I am feeling, something really big, like I'm panic, on the verge of panic attack or like really anxious, and I can bring myself back into my body and take some breaths and get out of my head, and just try to settle and stabilize safety within myself. Like I'll say, you're
Yeah.
safe here, Susie, or do a forward fold or something, whatever my practice
Hmm.
is. Afterwards, if I can then like take a step back and be like, okay, so yes, right now you were acutely worried about, right now my one of my sons is traveling solo in Laos. So it's like, right, that makes sense. You're and guess what? Like 2 months from now, you're not going to feel it's like stepping back. And I loved how listeners who are listening may not have seen it, but you like held your hands right up to your face. Like so, and I've talked about that before, that like it's like we're looking at a book and our nose is touching the book and we just can't see it. And it's like, oh my God,
Hmm.
I can't read, so it feels
Right.
panicky. It's like,
Take a step
step
back.
back,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay. Um,
Absolutely.
and so, yes, like to all of this and to, really supporting listeners and understanding that like this is a crucial part, like our human body and spirit is a part of who we are. And it,
A
it
thousand
is
percent.
yeah, connected. And um, I guess I want to speak to the point that it's like not as heavy as maybe it seems to people. Like we have to look back at our past
Oh
traumas and
no.
see
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like for me, like we already know, like that stuff is there. It's just
Yeah.
looking at it
Yeah. And it
now.
feels heavy because you don't have any realization of the other side. And it feels like
Yeah,
that is this permanent gravestone that you're going to come at. And why am I going to revisit that? I mean, I said the same thing. Like, why do
yeah,
I have to? I've felt that for 15 plus years.
right.
And
But
my
we
mentor was
haven't
like, no, no,
felt
no, no.
it. That's like
You
the
haven't
90
experienced.
seconds
Yes.
versus
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
right. No, I love that. And it is,
Yeah.
and it speaks to your point again about the fear of like, I don't want to feel that because I'll end up in a puddle. Whereas the reality is very different, that it passes. Um,
Hmm.
and so I guess how, like, if a listener is like, okay, I like this, how might this positively, and I'm just speaking to my listener who is possibly like, but I don't have time for this. And I'm a busy mom and I'm like, how might some of this work be helpful in partnerships and parenting?
Yeah. So I will say this. This is not to like give me a gold star. But I had a 2 and a 5-year-old. I had a partner who was supportive, like very
Mhm.
supportive. So I understand that not everyone has a partner or a supportive partner, much less. Um, Working a full-time job, lots of friends. My life was full.
Mhm.
And I truly believe, and this is no judgment, you will make time for the things that you're tired of. And I was
Mm,
tired of it.
mm,
I was tired of myself. I was tired of how I was showing up. I was tired of how I was responding to my kids and to my partner. I was tired of watching myself start to play out the journey that I didn't want to actually play out because I had already
mm,
lived it with my own parents. And I think for moms, this has been really permission giving for a lot of them. I went in COVID when I started the work that I do now. It was 30 of us, virtual space. I don't know that there was another parent in that virtual space.
mm.
Went to the retreat. There was one guy. Me and
Ah,
him bonded instantly. We had both been married for 10 plus years. We both had two kids. This
wow.
is not work for the faint of heart,
Hmm.
but my passion is that every mom, whether you are working 12 jobs, whether you have 12 kids, whether you don't have kids, like you can fold this work in, even if it is step by step.
Hmm.
And we may not have 2 weeks that we can go to a retreat in Bali. We may not have an hour to do a
Right.
breathwork journey, but there are little steps because I am a product of this,
Hmm.
of being able to slowly commit to the change day by day,
Hmm.
week by week, and to take in bits of this work
Hmm.
as you can and not having shame or guilt or judgment for yourself that your journey has to take 5 years instead of the
Hmm.
20-something-year-old that does it in 6 months.
Yeah, it's
It's
all
the
related.
journey. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So finding someone that number one embodies that. I
Hmm.
will say from my personal experience, the place that I'm at in my healing, she's actually in Australia, Amber Hawkins. I keep
Oh,
putting this
fun.
out there into the world, but she will likely be my next mentor because she is a mother and she's done this work deeply. And what I'm
Mm,
feeling called to is that I need mentorship by people that are living the life that I'm
yes.
living and seeing
Yeah.
the perspective that I'm seeing. And
Hmm.
so, not to say that you can't be with a therapist or a coach or facilitator healer that doesn't ride the same train that you ride,
Hmm.
but just notice when, again, alignment and intuition, if you
Intuition.
feel like that you're not being held in where you're at,
Hmm.
because I refuse to hear about or let anyone feel like just because they're a mom that this has to look a certain way.
Hmm.
It's whatever the road is that it needs to be for you.
Right. Well, and just this is like human experience. We learn through our actual
Hmm.
experiences. And so
Hmm.
I have gotten lots of great learnings from lots of different people myself too. And yet, um, like I'm better skilled to help people with codependency who are moms because I'm a mom, I'm a stepmom, I've been through divorce, I've had codependent, and it's like, and yes, I can read a book by someone who wasn't a mom, and but it again, I guess, it is this like listen to your intuition and what feels right to you, and how
Thousand
to
percent.
start, many steps and in getting there. And I guess what I'm hearing from you is, one mini step to do is to follow you on Instagram. I will put some of the links that
Yeah.
I love that book link that you spoke about with the 5 personality types, because my people
Yes.
love
Great
that. But
resource. Pick that up for sure.
really the main thing, because we can listen to podcasts and we can be like, yeah, yeah. But starting to take the action that you shared with the journal would be an area to start trying to listen in to, is that my intuition? What is, and maybe learning about self of what the different feeling is. Is that an area where you might direct listeners or?
Yeah. So I think anything that gets you into your body and present with yourself is going to be beneficial in some
Mhm.
way, shape, or form. And I think that the two integration questions that I always ask in my sessions, but also that I ask in breathwork sessions too when I'm
Mhm.
leading those, is from a sensation in the body, especially if you have shifted into one that feels more expansive. And this could come from literally like a minute of breath work, a minute of just slowing your breath down, exhaling longer, and then after a minute, checking in and being like, what feels different to me? Okay,
Mhm.
maybe I feel like a little bit less jittery, a little bit more open. Asking the question, what feels possible now? What
Mhm.
feels true now for you? Oh, I can take a break even if it's 60 seconds. Like
Mhm.
I honor my breath. I trust myself.
Mhm.
I make space for me. Whatever feels true and possible, name that, write it down, repeat it a couple times as you're breathing.
Mhm.
And then how can I then take that, what's true now, into my day? So
Mhm.
if I trust what's coming up for me, if I slow down and take care of myself, where can I do that throughout the rest of the day?
Mm.
Maybe it's instead of rushing into an appointment, you sit in your car for an extra 2 to 3 minutes
Mm.
and just check in.
Hmm.
Because that's the folding in the work that moms have to
Yeah.
do. Can I literally just walk across the kitchen 70% slower?
Yeah.
Can I lower my voice
Hmm.
and start to talk slower, even
Yeah.
to myself,
Yeah.
right? And that is the power of being a mom and having those little choices to consistently move the needle in the direction that you want to go in.
Well, it's also the power of your work and just, listening to podcasts like this and learning like these things make a difference. Like slowing down how you walk, like someone that's all in their head and not taking into all three parts of themselves, again, that doesn't make a difference. Or like I've had people be like, it's the weirdest thing. Like I stopped having the news play on the background and I just feel calmer. I don't know if it's connected. I'm like, it's connected.
Yeah. And
You're
anyone that says, I mean, I'll just say it right now. If you're listening to this, whenever this is broadcast, you walk across the room slower and it doesn't change anything, hit me up and I'll give you a free breathwork session
Yeah,
because it does.
it
And if
does.
you are resistant to that, that's actually a story of I
Yes.
can't change who I am.
Yeah. I
This is
can't
always going
slow
to be this way.
down. I
Nothing
need,
works for
right,
me. And so
right.
you get to unpack that. I mean,
Hmm.
it is a, because that's another story that we've been sold is that
Yes.
this is just how motherhood is. This is
Yeah.
just how being a working mom is. This is just
Hmm.
how it is in
This is
partnership.
just what it's
No, it
like. This is
actually,
right.
yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so it's taking these little moments of tuning into self and really trying to bring those three parts back online.
Hmm.
Not just listening, which is that first stage of what you said you help people through the awareness, but moving into some of the others after listening to this podcast episode would be my request for my warrior listeners to
Yeah.
take some of that into their life. So thank you
Hmm.
so much for coming on, Amanda. I'm
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
going to be so excited to click on the links and tell you that they love you. And I really appreciate your time. And
Yeah. It was
good.
great. Awesome. It's
Thank
been a joy.
you.
Thank you for putting this out in the world. Thank you for
Thank
supporting
you.
women.
Yeah.
And
Support
yeah,
those women, those moms.